I would like to thank our sponsor, Caliber Wings, who produce detailed scale die-cast models that strive to deliver a detailed experience that incorporates light weathering and colour toning that start from their Wave 3 models. This is finally bundled into a nice collector's box with dedicated illustrative box art to match. To purchase the models that have been shown, please visit caliberwings.com. Thank you. Okay, so Dozer, when did you first become interested in aviation?
I think when I was born.
When you were born, that was it?
Yeah, as far as I know, my mom said when I was 2, I used to make her take me to the airport to watch airplanes.
Wow.
So who has desires at that age? I guess it's just something that's always been a part of who I am. I honestly, my mom said from the time I was born, basically, that's all I ever liked was airplanes.
Wow. So what year did you join the US Air Force, and can you tell us some of the training aircraft you started on?
I went to the Air Force Academy in July of 1986, and at the Air Force, you flew gliders and you flew T-41s, which is basically a Cessna 172, although I already had my private pilot's license before I showed up at the academy. And then went to pilot training in Oklahoma where we flew T-37s, which we don't have anymore. They're now gone. T-38s, and then when that was over, I went right to F-15s.
Wow. So how long was your initial basic training?
And from a flying perspective, pilot training, that lasts a year, and that's still the same in the Air Force today, at least the U.S. Air Force. It's about a year long.
That's very quick compared to the RAF, that's for sure.
Some folks like I know I went over and spent some time with the Finns, and their process takes years to get there, and you start off in a different way. The Air Force, I think, maybe perhaps tradition, size, I don't know what makes it different, but you go to pilot training. After that, they kick you out to your fighter platform if you're lucky enough to graduate high enough to get a fighter or bomber, whatever it is. And then it takes, maybe 4 to 6 months, depending on the program, and then off you go to a squadron, you're operational. So it's kind of sink or swim. And some of the training is pushed off onto the operational squadrons, and you just have to learn and catch up. That's what it is.
So what was your first operational aircraft, and did you get a choice in the matter?
I did. When I graduated pilot training, I was lucky enough to be number 1 in my class. I say lucky because anybody can have a bad day, so it worked out well. So I was able to have the choice of whatever came down. There was 5 bases that were choosing the same night. That's what they called assignment night. And you get to choose based on what's on the board. And they go, okay, this base, you're on the phone. You get to choose whatever's up there, then the next base. It keeps going as the airplanes disappear off the board until the very last person at whatever base gets whatever's left. We were like second or third base. There was 4 F-15s, I think, and a F-111, something like that. And fortunately, we were like the second or third base to choose. And so I was like, F-15 it is. And so picked an F-15C. It was actually to Elmendorf, ironically, and that's how I got to choose. So it just kind of worked out that way. So we had to go to Tyndall for training. So my first operational aircraft was an F-15, and that was right after pilot training. That was about 4 or 5 months or so of training, if I remember right. And then after that training was over at Tyndall, kicked up to Elmendorf in Alaska.
So going back a bit, what did your ground training entail on the F-15?
The biggest part, I think, up front is the study. A lot of study because, you need to study, and that's one of the part of being a fighter pilot. You're almost always studying. So people think you're out, like Top Gun, you fly once or twice a day, then you go chase girls at the bar and work out volleyball, and then yay. No, it's not that at all. 12-hour, 14-hour days are the norm. And if you're not doing your job, if you're not a scheduler, or you could be a training, standardization, evaluation, you name it, there's all these different ancillary jobs you have to do. I say that to say because the rest of the time, if you're really going to be successful in the fighter world, you're studying. So you're studying aircraft systems, not the basic stuff, hydraulics, flight control, etc. But you're also studying the weapon systems. Your radar warning receiver, your radar, how it works. You're studying the weapons themselves. These days it's mostly AIM-120s, AIM-9X. How do they work? What's the capabilities of them? And then take it from there. You start studying the tactics Bible, the 3-1 that talks about here's how we employ the aircraft in 2-ship, 4-ship, in a big mission, etc. And then you keep racking that all the way up to the friendly guys. We're talking about the Brits. We're talking about the Aussies and what they fly, etc. Take it to the next level. That's the blue and gray stuff. Then you go to the red guys, right? You start talking maybe old Soviet equipment, surface-to-air missiles, enemy aircraft, or so-called that could be enemies, right? Because it could be anybody. So when you take that information, you literally could study 12 hours a day, every day for your entire life and never get to all the information. So that's a long answer to your short question, but there's a lot involved. The ground study is, I don't mean intense like in the physical sense. It's intense of there's so much information, and you also have to learn how to wicker that down into the things that are important, because not, how well your hydraulic system works. You don't really need that when you're in combat. You kind of need to know how your weapons are working and the tactics and what the bad guys have. But it's all part of the things in the back of your head, because if you get hit in combat, if something breaks, it's an emergency, and you have to be able to handle it. So it starts with everything from basic aircraft systems, working all the way through to the advanced threats that you might face in combat. And it's a lot of information to study. So it basically never stops. I was a squadron commander for 18, 19 years. I'm still studying. Back what these things are, or what we're doing, whatever it happens to be. So there's a lot of information.
So can you remember your first trip in the F-15?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I do.
What was that like?
Very first flight with a guy in the back seat, because they had instructors who had two-seat models, didn't in the F-22. We did in the F-15. And it was out of Tyndall, and it was the first one. And I think the second one was where you got to do the max performance takeoff, and up you go. But the first one I remember, because it was just, you're like, there's so many things happening all at once. Just basically you go out, and I think you did some aerobatics and, basic stuff with the aircraft just to get a feel for it a little bit, and then come back and do a whole bunch of instrument approaches, which are boring. Everybody hates them, but you have to learn how to do it because you're flying by yourself. You don't have all the fancy stuff you have in the modern airliners or whatnot. So you have to, and it's all you. So there's no other crew to rely on. So I do remember it. It was hot because it was summertime. I want to say it was late April. And in Florida, so hot, humid, a lot going on, trying to catch up to the airplane because you're way behind it. I mean, your mil power in an F-15 was as good as afterburners in T-38. So the fastest, powerful thing you've seen is all of a sudden you're just like behind the jet. And it takes a little bit of time. And the second story we did, the max performance, the same thing. It's like, holy cow. You're like, now that's in full burn. It's like Star Wars. Where they go to light, it goes, whoo, past you. That's what it kind of feels like. And then what's really ironic later on in life, you feel like, actually, everything's real slow. You got to burn it. Come on, let's go faster. It's kind of weird after your body catches up to it. It takes time. But yeah, I do remember. Really cool, and I remember being very overwhelmed because things happen so fast. Yeah.
So what kind of flying sorties would you do in your training in the F-15?
Yeah, the first one's like I was just saying, it's a lot of aerobatics, kind of, your basic airmanship. Learn how to fly the airplane, because the airplane can, you have to know how to max perform your aircraft and make it do whatever you can make it do without putting it out of control, because that's what's potentially going to be required in combat. If somebody else is flying their airplane well and it's a good airplane, you could be evenly matched. That's tough. That's a tough fight. So you do that all the way through the instrument, stuff that's all the front boring. But then it starts working out the very basics. So two airplanes together, and you start doing the basics of, the air combat maneuvering. But really, we would call it BFM, which is single ship, and they have different terms depending on where you are. So the dogfight. You're offensive, learn how to get in and kill the other guy. Then you're defensive, trying to learn how to survive. And then you do what they call high aspect BFM for us, which is neutral. You just hit the merge neutral and just see who can win based on restrictions. And then from there you step it up, and then you go out as a two-ship, and that's the basic pair in the Air Force and the Navy, Marines, et cetera, for the U.S. at least. Most Air Forces, that is a two-ship. And you learn how to work together. Okay, two of you versus one bad guy. And then it steps up from there to intercepts, and 2 versus 2, and maybe 2 versus 4. So everything just keeps building. But when you're the new guy, 2 versus 2 or 4 is about the max you're going to do, because you get overwhelmed pretty quick with that too. So
yeah,
F-15s. You're the sensor operator. You have to do it all yourself. You're manipulating the radar, making it all work, and everything comes in through the radio. You got to build the three-dimensional picture in your head. And you go take an F-22, and this is I know we're diverging off this, but F-22 does it all for you. So you can take 4 of the most highly experienced weapons school instructors on the planet and put them in 4 F-15s and a lieutenant clueless nobody in an F-22. He's probably going to find them all, kill them all, and they'll probably not be able to do nothing about it. Wow. You put out clueless in an F-15. You put even one good guy on the other side, it's very likely the lieutenant's going to get killed. So because just that there's that much of a difference in technology. So. Back then, the F-15 still reigned supreme, still kind of the best airplane kind of out there. For a lot of big radar helps, flies relatively high at the time, I thought, until F-22 came along. A lot of it, I think, more than anything, was the sensors, the weapons we had, and the training. And those make a difference, because if you have 2 guys in similar aircraft and one has really good training and tactics and the other doesn't, well, he's probably going to win. If one if they have two similar airplanes, but one airplane has much better weapons, that airplane is very likely to win. So at the time, through the 90s, at least in the 2000s, we really, I think our tactics were better than most. I'm not talking, like other tier one countries, but more like maybe the countries we might fly against, like Iraq, et cetera. Our tactics were certainly better. Our training and how much we flew in practice was much better. Our weapons were typically a lot better. Our command and control structure, like with AWACS, helping all of that bits of information that you need to build a situational three-dimensional picture around yourself, was better. And of course, when we go to combat, we're pretty good at tearing apart their system. We take down their eyes and ears. We take out their advanced radar warning. We would shut down their communications. Whatever it takes to blind them, to make it hard for them to fight. And usually that didn't happen to us. So we came in with a lot of awareness, and they didn't. So I think that at the time, the F-15, certainly through the 90s and the 2000s, kind of reigned, like I said, for all of those reasons. It's really hard, Mike, to say one thing, go, oh, that's the reason. It's more than one. It's usually many factors that kind of combine and get pretty complex. But suffice to say, good airplane, even though it was getting older, really good weapons, still pretty good sensors, excellent training and tactics. And with the other ancillary support things that come on board with that, you add all those together, we typically did really, really well.
Brilliant. So then you got posted to Elmendorf. What was your role there?
Started off as a brand new lieutenant, snacko. I'm the guy that gets the beer and the potato chips in the bar, right? That's kind of your role. You're always the new guy, and you start off that way. And of course, you're just trying to fly as much as you can and get experience. And everybody wants to fly as much as they can because that's what you're there for. It's what you love to do. So a lot of flying, a lot of studying. I became a scheduler right away. That was my ancillary job I talked about, which you sit there all day trying to figure out what the next schedule is going to be for the next day and the day after that and next week. And it's complicated. It changes. Somebody falls out. Somebody gets sick. Whatever happens, and the whole schedule explodes on you. And so you spend hours trying to fix the next day. And always jealous of the guys that were working in weapons or somewhere where they got to study, because you're out doing the crappy job, which nobody wants to be in scheduling, which I was in scheduling almost my entire first assignment. So then you try to, work your way through that. And then after that, Mike, is trying to get always an upgrade, right? Because you start off as a wingman, you want to be a flight lead. And then you're a two-ship flight lead. That takes a lot of study and practice and an upgrade program that kind of kicks you pretty hard. And then you want to be a four-ship flight lead, so you can take four ships out, because that's the basic we would typically go to war with. And then you want to be able to be a mission commander, which can go out and take a 4 or 8 ship of your aircraft, F-15s, and mix into a big, like a red flag or an actual combat a mission. If we were deployed, like at the time it was always flying out of Turkey or Saudi Arabia over Iraq, all the no-fly zones. And then you want to be an instructor pilot. That's the next thing, right? So then you're always gunning for that one, because then that's the guy that gets to fly the blue air all the time, the good ones, because now you're training the guys that are doing their upgrades, and you get to be the wingman and listen to the brief. Fun flying. So you're always kind of on that. And the other part is, for a lot of folks, is the desire once you get in the fighter world, so you want to go be a weapons school. You want to go to weapons school, which is our Top Gun. The Air Force had it first. I always have to mention that over the Navy, because the Navy got the really cool movie and we got Iron Eagle, which sucked.
Yeah, very true.
Yeah. So, but it's called the U.S. Air Force Weapons School, and the Navy calls it the same thing. It's just Top Gun was the nickname. So everybody wants to go to that, because you only pick 4, 5, 6 guys every 6 months to go through. So it's a pretty small group, and the training is incredible. I mean, it's getting your PhD in flying, right? So, but you have to be an instructor pilot for a certain amount of time and hours before you get that. I got very lucky. I upgraded very quickly at Elmendorf, and the timing was right, and I was able to get to be an instructor fast enough to build up enough time that at the end of my first assignment, I actually went to weapons school.
Oh, wow.
And so after that 3 years and some change, I went off to weapons school. And then when that was over, I went off to Lakenheath after that as the next assignment. So it's that's one of those kind of coveted positions if you're lucky enough to get them, timing works out, et cetera. And we flew a lot at Elmendorf back in the 90s when I was here. So I was able to get the hours. Some people were places where they couldn't fly so much, and it was a little bit it was a lot harder to get the hours you needed. Not so much because they didn't have the capabilities. Sometimes things just don't work out. So I was in the right place at the right time for that.
So how was it different flying over in the UK compared to the US?
Hugely different, and a lot of reasons. Europe is a very compact airspace. I mean, tight. A lot of people, a lot of airplanes, a lot of countries flying. The rules were much different, much tighter in Europe than they were in Alaska. Alaska is pretty much take off, leave Anchorage. I'm just like, okay, see ya, go do your thing. and these massive airspaces. One of our airspaces is, I think, much bigger than England.
Wow.
Just the airspace, or close to. I mean, a little bit of exaggeration, but it's massive, and no real restrictions, almost no people. So you don't have to worry about that. You fly over the land in Europe, you better be careful. You go supersonic, you go here, you go there. I mean, there's people everywhere. You get in trouble. It's kind of a downer for a pilot, fighter pilot especially. It's not the days back in the 60s and 70s with the Fulda Gap and the Soviets where you could go crazy and supersonic and have all these battles and nobody cared. I can't do that anymore. So the best training space we had was over the water, where we got to fight with folks. We got to fight with Brits and the Dutch, and everybody else would come in, the Germans, etc. That was pretty good, and no restrictions. But and of course the weather. The weather tends to be foggy, nasty a lot in northern Europe, if you will, over there. So that was often an issue. So the flying stuff, but I will tell you, I mean, the weather was kind of the airspaces were kind of constricted because of the environment, but the flying we got to do, the amount of people we got to fly against, I mean, nearly every sortie could be against a dissimilar adversary if you wanted it to be, because somebody wanted to fly with you. Whether we're at whatever country, F-16s, Tornadoes, you name it, they were all over the place. I mean, so we got to fly with all kinds of cool stuff. The Harriers would come in. I mean, just the amount of training opportunities against other countries and aircraft types was phenomenal. And even a lot of exercises, because like every month there's another exercise going on in Europe you can go participate in. So the training opportunities were awesome. And on top of that, it's just living in Europe. You go, America, you get to go to Europe, so you can go see these different countries and go see some of the history, which we did a lot of. I think my wife, I was deployed 14 months out of the 2.5 years we were there, because Kosovo and, I think several times in Iraq, flying out of Turkey over Iraq, but my wife's like, the heck with you. She's like, she's gone. She's taking the kids, and then we're up traveling, seeing things pretty cool. So overall, it was a fantastic assignment. It's just a much different environment, obviously, than Alaska. So, but, they both have pros and cons. Alaska, we rarely saw adversaries. We almost always flying against other F-15s, which there's some things that aren't perfect about that either. So, and that's weather was great, because you're flying and get your marshmallow man if it's minus 20 degrees out and you're all geared up and all this stuff, and that's uncomfortable. So everything's got its pros and cons. They always do.
And then while you were based at Lakenheath in 1999, you had a pretty eventful evening, didn't you? Could you share this with us?
Yeah, I did. They had that whole, we'll avoid the politics and all the stuff about the campaign of Operation Allied Force, because there was a lot going on in that part of the world. But, nobody wants to see war, obviously, because there's bad stuff. But there was bad things happening anyways. Regardless, our leaders put us there, right? I mean, NATO and the U.S., we decided to get involved. So at the end of the day, we just went and did what we were told to do, basically. And, so we were deployed out of Italy, which was a really cool deployment, minus the war part of it, because hadn't been to Italy before, and the food was good, and we lived near a beach and a hotel, and it was a really cool setup, and the folks were really friendly. So enjoyed that part. So March 24, 1999, that was the first day of Operation Allied Force, when the aircraft got involved. I'm sure there were ground things happening that we didn't know about, but aircraft got involved, and I was fortunate enough, being the weapons officer still. They would just hand it off to a brand new weapons officer, but he just got there and didn't know the squadron. So, of course, I'm planning everything kind of from that perspective. And we had 4 F-15s up north going into Serbia. We had 4 down south, and we had 2 big strike packages. So we had 2 pushes, if you will, that very first night, in from the north and south side times 2. So, but they were separated by obviously a number of hours. And there was a lot of kind of surreal things, because I've been in Iraq a lot, and every once in a while they toss a surface-to-air missile or something, but not a big deal, right? And this was a little different, because this was like a real country that was intact. Its infrastructure was there. The Serbs are not known. I mean, they know how to fight. I mean, they're good fighters. Their equipment was just, not as up to par as ours was, or the mass numbers that we had right control. So I don't take anything away from the Serbs, because I said they're tough. If they had the same equipment, or more things to their advantage, it would have been a heck of a lot harder fight for sure. Plus, I give them kudos. They're defending their country, right? I mean, we'd all do the same thing if we had, because we're attacking their country, right or wrong or whatever. Get involved, but they're, got it. They're defending their country. That's what they're supposed to do. I would have done the same thing. So we had, specifically for where I was down south or up north. I had 4 F-15s, 4 F-16 CJs, was shooting the HARM missiles back at the surface-to-air missiles, playing that little game. And we had two B-2s that were coming in all the way from the United States, and they were flying from the south side of the country all the way across it to the north. And we were kind of, the southern force-ship with its strike package of aluminum jets was going to kind of hand off the B-2s halfway across the country to us and then protect them there. And then we had 10 F-117s that were still flying. So that was our strike package up north. We were the stealth package.
Wow, 10.
Except for
That's a lot.
8 F. Yeah, it was. Other than the 8 F-15s and F-16s total, because we were the chum, right? They can see us and shoot us, but they can't see the other guys. That's part of the theory. So we pushed in from Hungary and went south towards Belgrade, and that's where most of our targets were at. And we were out in front of everybody because that's the F-15's job. And we kind of got to the very first cap, which is just north of Belgrade, and we had 4 of us. We were split apart because it's all nighttime, so it's dark. And we're in a trail formation, so 3 to 5 mile trail is kind of what we did back in the day. Don't do that anymore, but we used to. And usually we didn't have data link, we didn't have MVGs, we didn't have any of the fancy tools that you have now for all this stuff to make it much easier to employ that way. And so we got to the very south edge of our cap, our combat air patrol, and we kind of did our first spin. And as I turned around on that, the F-16s are getting close, F-117s right behind them. You don't know that other than they're getting close, timing-wise. And I saw the first little blip on the radar, and it was out of Batajanica, which was their MiG-29 base out of Belgrade. And so locked it up. It was 150 knots, 1,500 feet, just taking off. I'm sure, I know it was their pilots, their MiG-29s and alert scrambling as soon as they knew we were coming into country. So those guys are hopping in their jets and firing up to take off. And he turned around about 35 miles, and I kind of track him down the scope for a bit, and I lock him, at the appropriate range, say 25-ish miles or so, and start working the electronic ID because there's a number of things we had to fulfill to say that he was a hostile, somebody that we could shoot at. And I did all that, and we got a lot closer. We were probably about 14, 15 miles apart. Finally got the ID, called it out on the radio, and took the first shot, which was an AIM-120, and then followed it up very shortly after because it was active. We were so close, it was active off the rail. Which switched over to AIM-7 because we had 2 AIM-7s, 4 AIM-120s, and the AIM-7's got a big warhead. You hope it really does, takes care of the problem if the aircraft's still working. And plus, I'd always wanted to shoot one. So it was one of those kind of things as well. I'm like, hey, I can shoot as many as I want here. It's just combat. And we also had a philosophy, typically always shoot 2 because missiles miss. They're not hittles, they're missiles, right? They miss a lot. And our peak is like 60% or something, whatever. X number of missiles aren't going to hit. So something's not going to work. The enemy's going to maneuver. It's going to get jammed or whatever. So you always try to shoot a couple to up the probability of a kill. I did that. And off they went. And staring at Belgrade in the background, pretty cool because it's a VFR night, so crystal clear, lights of the city in the background. And I'm just watching the missiles go, and they get to about 5-6 miles, and the aircraft's breaking into the beam on me. And I watch the first missile time out. About the time the second one times out, I don't see a fireball. I'm like, switch over back to an AMRAAM, shoot a third one. And now I'm diving down towards him, and he's kind of, in a corner to me turning. When that last missile comes off at about 5-ish miles, he breaks out of the beam, starts to kind of come merge head to head. And we're about 1.5 miles, 2 miles apart. The missile, which I'm just watching the motor because I can see it burn. So I can't see him with the eyeballs. I'm just watching the missile. I'm looking outside, and the missile motor from that little orange goes to big fireball. And so I'm like, God. All right, so I call splash on the radio and kind of watch it spiral, down towards the ground. You never know what happens to the pilot. You find out after, all the things are over, they had to pick him up, and he survived. Okay. I believe only one pilot of the ones that were shot down died, and they told us based on, what they had for intelligence assets gathering information that the only one that actually died was, I believe, one of them died during the ejection in that 2v2 daytime a couple days later that we had, and one of them might have died because they believe one of their own aircraft was shot down by a surface-to-air missile.
Right. Yeah.
So I even have the interview from the guy that I shot down from the Yugoslav press. It's kind of funny because all the timing matched. So, but I watched that one and came off of that and went back to the back edge of my cap, and came back around and watched the next guy take off. I'm like, oh boy, here we go again. Now the strike package is around us. This looked exactly like the first one. Everything was the same except this guy went into that sideways maneuver, that beam very early, and I was up at high altitude because the strike package is below me, and we're not really supposed to dive down there. So I'm like, ooh, okay. So I kind of stay up high and I don't get down low, and I can't fulfill all the ID requirements at the time. And this was something I found out after the sortie was over. I was screaming on the radio to folks, about ID, lack of friendly, some of the electronic stuff. And F-16s and F-15s were looking at this guy as well. My other two Eagles were. And nobody could get an electronic ID. The F-16s couldn't do lack of friendly, looking for the IFF codes on them. We could, and I was I was listening to the F-16s because I knew two of the guys on the radio, and they were asking for that call, and I made that call like 5 times on my radio. You listen to my tape, the radio's like making this squelching sound. It was jamming itself. And so about 75% of my comm that I put out that night, nobody heard, which I had no idea, right? They just being quiet, I guess, or everything's all calm and good. And so all of the Eagles and Vipers, I ended up right over the top of the guy, like at 35,000 feet, and he's at 10 with my 2-ship. And everybody else had to turn around and run away because nobody could ID him to get in there, and you can't get in there at night and turn with somebody. So this one little MiG-29 is like everybody's running away from him, all 8 of us, right, trying to get separation. One of the F-16s got a spike, may or may not have been from the MiG-29, turned around, ran up for a while. Anyway, so I kind of get over the top of him, and I kind of do a spin. AWACS tells me there's another MiG-29 to the south. I'm like, son of a gun, where are they coming from? So I turn around, and this whole package with that MiG-29 keep going north, and we drive right over the northern edge of Belgrade, nothing on the radar at all. We can't see a thing. Come to find out later, AWACS is pretty infamous for calling ground traffic because they have filters, and if they have the filter set low, BMW doing 100 on the highway can pop up as an aircraft and they can call it out.
Yeah.
I'm not. It happens, and they're getting excited in the moment with things happening. So they were calling it out as traffic, and they of course said MiG-29. I'm like, So turn around, nothing there. We're over Belgrade, getting kind of in the SAM range. I'm like, that's it. We're going north. The F-16s and F-15s had turned around at that time and said, hey, Dozer. They didn't really use that, but my call sign. They said my actual call sign at the time. They said, hey, there's the hostile, blah, 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 bullseye. I'm like, turn around. I'm like, oh, he's right off the nose, 20 miles away. As soon as I turn around, one sweep of the radar, there he is. I lock him, immediately get all the ID stuff within seconds that I need to declare that he's a bad guy, except that now I don't know where everybody else is. So I'm still up high, like 7,000 feet. This dude's at 10. And I start diving for the deck now. And I know there's stuff, but at some point I got to get down here to, get in the appropriate place to shoot. And while this is happening, I'm screaming on the radio, asking everybody for their posit, where they're at. Nobody hears a thing because my radio's not working. I have no idea. And I'm hostile. I'm saying, here he is. And I'm asking them nothing. And this is happening fast because we're beak to beak. It started like 18 miles, so it doesn't take long. And I get to 5 miles, and I'm at like 20,000 feet diving, and I'm like, screw it. I can't wait anymore. I don't know where everybody is, and I figure at 5 miles I'm close enough, that there's probably not anybody between us. So I go and I shoot another AIM-120. Made a mistake, only shot one. Second mistake, I didn't offset. I just drove right at him. If I'd have given myself some room, I could have pulled in behind him and continued to shoot if he didn't blow up. So I just take the one because I'm screaming on the radio, and really I'm behind. I'm not paying attention. And that dude, or I'm watching that guy, I'm watching the missile. And I see a little kind of pop, like a little explosion. I go, ooh, no fireball though. I mean, I don't know. Did it go by the aircraft and detonate? Did it hit the ground? I have no idea because time dilation. So I see that, and I look, no fireball. And I come back in to shoot again because he's almost underneath me now, and the radar's flashing like he's about to gimbal off the bottom because I didn't do that little intercept and pull. I'm like, son of a. So I do a full split S at night, right, and end up right over the top of the guy, somewhere in that ball, very close, a couple thousand feet away. And of course, he drops off the radar right in the middle of it. I'm like, son of a gun. So now they got probably a live MiG below me right there. Nobody, I have no idea. And this is all happening with me now. I have no time to talk to anybody and tell them what's going on. This is happening. I throw out this auto guns radar mode, trying to find the guy. I give it a little bit. I'm like, no MVGs. I'm like, can't see anything. I'm like, this is not a good place to be. So I just basically start doing a 360 spin to come back around and try to catch him. Well, in the meantime, I look up on the spin, and I see this guy up in the contrails, and that's my wingman who had stayed up there the whole time. And he was locked to him, find out after the sortie's over. He's locked to him. Everything's good, but he gets no ID. I'm the only guy that gets an ID. And he doesn't hear me say hostile. He doesn't hear me say Fox 3. He doesn't hear any of the stuff that I'm doing. Nobody does. And so I look down after I'm chasing this guy doing this spin to get back around the corner, and I see him still headed in the direction of the MiG because he's locked to him the whole time.
Wow.
He has no idea what's going on. And I said, hey, confirm heading. He's like, south. I'm like, come north. He's like, okay. Doesn't tell me he's locked the guy. He's a brand new wingman. Wow. Mano had like 150 hours in the jet. Our other wingman behind the squadron commander, who was my number 3, so our number 4 guy, had like 90 hours in the jet. Brand new guys. Hanging on the first night of combat at night. And so Mano just does what his weapons officer tells him. Okay, so he breaks lock, doesn't say a word, and he just spins and follows Brown behind me. And so I do the spin. He gets back behind me, the whole thing, and we figure all this out after it's over, right? So I basically, as soon as I swing the corner, I get a lock. I don't know, 7, 8, 9 miles away. It's the same. It's the MiG. I know it is. Same guy, same altitude, same heading, everything. Although he's starting to slow down, descend a little bit. Mm-hmm. So I asked, like, okay, help me out here, boys, because it's the NATO AWACS. I'm like, declare bullseye, blah, blah. And they go, friendly. I'm like, what? So like, did I just shoot friendly? Your stomach kind of get a sinking feeling.
Yeah.
And I figured out what happened. And we know it happens. When plots merge on the AWACS scope, they'll get the same ID and they'll transfer and go out of it because they don't know who's who now, depending on how things are picked up. So when they merged, as the plots separate, they just see that I'm a friendly and my wing was a friendly and merged with that MiG, which they didn't know what it was because they didn't have it all together. So they just got a friendly track marching off, right? So I'm like, son of a gun. So I break lock and go, maybe there's an F-16 or somebody around. That's what I was trying to get that earlier comm to ask where people were at. And so I break lock. I do a full radar scope. I'm climbing back up to get back in and the ability to shoot him again, get close enough. And so nobody's home. Nothing on the scope at all except one radar blip. No friendly, no nothing. So I lock him up again. He's a little bit lower, a little bit slower, heading back towards Badjanika. And I go, declare bullseye, blah, 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 blah. And AWACS goes, friendly. I go, holy crap. I'm like, well, I know it's a bad guy. But now I'm kind of honor bound. There's nothing I can do. I can't shoot at something that just said it's friendly because what if it is, right? Yeah. Even though in my heart of hearts I know it's not, but I can't break that rule. And we had no other means at the time to electronically identify them ourselves. So I'm kind of stuck now. And I follow them for a little while. And we get close to the edge, back over the edge of Belgrade, and the surface to air missiles, the rings and stuff. I'm like, screw this. This is stupid. We're out of here. So I break lock, turn back, go back to the cap, and hang out for, however much longer it was, another 10, 15 minutes to where, the strike package is over and everybody's kind of pulling their way out, heading back north and leaving. So it was a pretty chaotic night. I was the only guy up north that got to do shooting, and I ended up shooting 4 missiles off the jet by myself, and I was kind of in the middle of the whole thing, and there's F-16s, F-15s, and it's like, I'm the guy right smack in the middle. So that luck and that timing thing, right? I mean, anybody else could have been, would have, should have, depending. It's the guy in the middle of the fight the whole time, shooting back and forth. So just had that knack for being in the right place at the right time on that one, and could have done some things a lot better. Definitely missed a chance to do it right and shoot down that second aircraft. I am glad. It sounds weird, but I'm glad that the guy that I did shoot ejected because I have no desire to kill anybody. It's just one of those things. It's just another. They're putting 2 men, 2 pilots, making them face each other in combat, and you want to die, so you do your job. Down south, to top it off, because it was kind of cool in a way, not the war part of it, like I said, but it's cool for the F-15 squadrons, the air-to-air guys. We had we got, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4 of the 6 kills were by our little F-15 squadron, which for us is awesome, right? Because we're not dropping bombs. It's never F-15Cs don't drop bombs, so it's only air-to-air for us with the airplanes. And Rico Rodriguez, who had gotten 2 kills in Desert Storm down south, was the very first night. I know we had talked about that, kind of boring. He just basically drove at the first MiG. On that, he was in the southern strike package, same time we were up north. He just drove right at the guy, took a shot, cranked off to the side, waited. The guy hit him, blew up, and it was over. I mean, that was it. Down south, it was like, oh wow, that was kind of boring, right? And that was it in a nutshell. And then a couple days later, we had that 2v2 during the daytime that they shot down the 2 MiG-29s over Bosnia. And then 2 F-16s at different times. There's actually a Dutch guy, if you're familiar, remember, he shot down with 2 AIM-120s on that second strike package night. Yeah. And then it was many, 6 or 7 weeks into it when there was that one MiG-29 that took off middle of the daytime package and an F-16 shot. Mm-hmm. Yeah. That was in a nutshell. So it wasn't, the first night was pretty busy. And then it got real quiet after that, and the servers got real smart and started tossing a lot of surface-to-air missiles at us for the next couple months, and it was a battle after that. So, I know that's it, but that's kind of the version of the story, I guess. That's out front.
Yeah, I can imagine. You didn't get much sleep that night, Dozer.
No, I did not. And Mano was pretty funny. He was my wingman, and of course, brand new guy, barely hanging on. And we went back to the hotel, and we went and got some breakfast because then we're on this night schedule. So then we tried to sleep, right? And Mano just had this smile on his face. You couldn't get rid of it, because he was just like in this here he's this brand new guy, and he's in the middle of this thing, and all this stuff he saw and was listening to it. He's just like, oh, he's completely overwhelmed. He couldn't even talk. I mean, just like he had this look in his face that whole morning to the next night, and then of course we just keep going. But it was pretty funny. And I had Amanda with me when the F-117 was shot down. That was kind of cool. And a couple nights later, because it was different, because we were supposed to fly down south, and we got weathered out, and our northern force ship was going to be up for like 7 hours, so we went and replaced them and kicked them out, and we got to be in there while it was happening, and that was really cool in a different way, because there's a ground that's on your team, and the other team's trying to hit them, and you're listening to the frequency, and you're watching the A-10s and the helicopters come in and listening to the ground fire, and you're sitting right over the top of the whole thing going, can't do anything about it, but you listen to the whole thing. So a lot of really interesting things you got to see that you always train for, but very few people get the chance to see them over the career. So see and do a lot of really interesting things.
The current F-14 squadron's caliber wings have in stock are VF-142 Ghost Riders and VF-14 Top Hatters. They are both in the 72nd scale with a level of detailed experience one would expect on a high quality plastic kit. You can check them out by visiting caliberwings.com. Thank you. You then were lucky enough to go to the F-22 Raptor. Can you tell us how this came about?
Yeah, so all the way back to college, I saw pictures of that airplane going, that's a cool jet. That'd be something to fly. Never figured it would happen. I went back after Lake to the weapons school, so I was teaching there for about 3 years, and towards the end of that assignment, they had put a request out, finally, in 2001, and they asked for experienced pilots, because they obviously wanted experienced pilots, had to be a weapons school graduate, they wanted mostly F-15C guys. So myself and another guy at the weapons school put our package in, and a few other people around the Air Force did, and I somehow, luck and timing again, I was one of the 8 guys picked to go out to Edwards and do the operational test. So went out there, and right after that assignment was over in 2002 in the summer, and spent the next year hoping we were going to get a chance to fly it, because the aircraft wasn't really on time, and it was having all kinds of electronics problems, and the basic airframe, engines, all that stuff was fantastic. That was all money, the stealth, all those things, but the electronic suite was tough. They were trying to get it to work right. That was the hard part. And we were about 50-50 whether or not that aircraft was going to survive the testing process and make it or not. So, but anyways, we trained ourselves, because nobody else had used it before tactically. They'd only done the beeps and squeaks testing. So we started figuring out how we're going to do this and how to train ourselves and how we're going to use the aircraft, start rewriting the 3-1, which is the tactics manual, and how we're going to use this new airplane with the stealth stuff. I think I actually coined the term offensive stealth versus passive or defensive stealth, because B-2 F-1 defensive, and they just have to run and hide. They can't shoot back, can't turn, can't fight. The F-22, on the other hand, is an offensive stealth aircraft. It uses the stealth to not be shot, but it goes on the attack. I mean, obviously it goes to shoot down other things, drop bombs, that kind of thing. So a different use. And, it flies high and fast, and that helps a lot as well. F-117, a low, slow airplane. B-2's high but slow. So a lot of different things we started kind of toying with to go, what's going to work here, and what kind of formations. Do you fly 2 expensive F-22s right beside each other like we did F-15s, F-16s, or do you split apart? It's using the advantages that the aircraft has. So we experimented with a lot of things. I just got lucky to be one of those 8 guys. We went out to Edwards and did that for about a year and a half until the test took place. And an interesting story, we had a hard time getting 2 aircraft to work at the same time, because we had 4 or 5 airplanes available, but they just couldn't have them working right. All kinds of maintenance problems. Not our maintainer, it's issues. And the very first day that they had 2 jets together that were able to fly and work, we had F-15s from Langley next door, and over at Nellis, and we were going to meet them in the airspace when we could get aircraft up to fly. And myself and one other guy, Banger Newton, were at the test facility. Everybody else was gone doing something, whatever. The 2 of us, and then they came in. They were like, "Hey, we got 2 airplanes. They're working. Do you guys want to fly?" We're like, "Yeah." So let's go. Let's see if we can make it work. So Banger and I hop in the jets, and everything works. And we call the Langley guys, get them to come out the airspace. It all is going to set up. So we fly, the 2 of us. And granted, we've done lots of simulator stuff and all this, all the promises, but everybody's still like, yeah, is this stealth thing really going to work the way they say it is, et cetera. And we're going against F-15, so now it's no longer simulated, it's real. And this is the first time this has ever happened in history. We take off, we get out to the airspace, we got tankers on both sides, we got 4 operational F-15s from Langley and the 2 of us, and we're going to try this out, try our tactics, do whatever, see how it works. So we set up the battles, and we do, I don't know how many, 5, 6, 7, 8 intercepts by the end of the day. Every time we just run right at them, go high, we'd go lower, we'd offset, we'd do whatever. Every time we shot them, killed them all, never saw us, rolled behind them. Every single time. First time or two, they're like, "Where are you guys at?" And we're like, "We're a mile behind you." They're like, "What?" And they do, "What you guys?" And it's like, we're like, "Holy mackerel!" We came back, wrote our test report, stuff like, "I have seen the future." I'm like, "This is not. It is not fake. This stuff flipping works. These are operational combat pilots. There were some combat experienced pilots. I mean, there's nothing fake about this. This is the real deal."
Yeah.
And we wrote that up, and everybody was like, "Oh my gosh, you got to be kidding me!" So it was really cool. And then we flew like 1 or 2 more times because the jets were still working. They kept doing stuff, but it was the first time we'd ever seen that. I had all these tests, or these folks that had been working on the jet their whole career had come up, and one of them was crying. He was like, "You just validated my whole life's work." I mean, it was really awesome, to see. But it was the first time that we had a chance to see it do its thing. And then we started testing against F-16s, other F-15s. We had special test things come out. I mean, we just did a lot of really cool stuff. And after a while, people were like, "Okay, this is no longer a joke. This thing is not just theory anymore. This is real. And oh, by the way, it works." And then part of the test was 4 ships, where we launched, I believe, 10 missions, if I remember right, at 4 ships. I could have that wrong. 4B up to like 12 plus F-15s or F-16s or mix, whatever, to do these tactics. And I remember us coming up with some things that was getting so ridiculous that the F-16 guys over there in Nellis would be like, "Are you guys actually flying in the airspace? Or are you just calling us dead in the radio?" It's kind of true, because they never.
Yeah.
And I remember one of my favorite 4B-12, I believe it was, and I'm pretty sure it was F-15s on the Nellis ranges. We said, "Hey, let's see how fast we can kill them all." Just like being cocky, arrogant, right? So right to Mach 2, right high altitude, just fast as we could go. Just ran them down, and I believe from 80 miles apart or something like that. It took us like 2 minutes and 22 seconds or something to kill all 12 of them, and they never saw us, took shots. And you're like, "You got to be flipping kidding me." I remember once a 2-ship had peeled off and was trying to run away. Then I'm at high altitude fast, and they're running away at Mach 1, and I got like Mach 1 of closure, like running them down. I mean, that kind of stuff with the airplane, you're like, this thing is unbelievable. So we learned a lot, and we were pretty surprised on some of on just how well the aircraft actually did. Like I said, because the basic airframe, engines, all that stuff it's a thoroughbred all by itself. But when you add the sensors working correctly, and that the jets are talking to each other and sharing data, and the whole package comes together with tactics, it's nothing is perfect, but it's nearly untouchable when it's done right. And it's even it's got that same kind of capability against ground threats. I mean, you can kind of mess with them too and see and not see stuff. So it's a very capable aircraft across the board. And that stealth matters. I mean, that's a big deal, right? Because you got like the Super Hornet, they go, "It's stealthy." I'm like, "Not really," because when you hang all the weapons off, it's not stealthy anymore. Stuff hanging on the outside really isn't stealthy. There's serious numbers you have to get to. And aircraft really need to be clean to be stealthy. And most aircraft, if you're not putting it all internal, you're not clean. So, and big powerful radars like the SAMs and stuff, it doesn't, they've got a lot of energy, and they can see you when you got stuff hanging on your airplane. So people tell you that, well, our Raphael or our Super Hornet, they're really stealthy. Not really, not in the classic sense. That's a lot of story, again, a lot of me talking on it, but that's how luckily I ended up in the F-22 and got to do some really cool testing, and got a chance to go to Langley and stand up that operation, and got a really weird phone call to go up to Elmendorf to stand up that operation. And after 3 stand-ups in the F-22 and 20 years in the Air Force and flying and all the stuff I got to do, I said, hey, it's really awesome. Love it, but now it's the Pentagon and staff and all kinds of other silly stuff that doesn't have anything to do with the mission of flying anymore, and that's what I love to do. And we just decided we were back in Alaska for the second time. We're gonna park it. So parked it, got out, fly for FedEx in my little mall, zipping around, bush flying and having fun. That's my fighter flying now. It's my little mall airplane. But it was a heck of a career, Mike. I can't lie. I mean, I got to do some really cool stuff, meet some fantastic people, lifelong friends, and things that I could have never imagined, 30 years ago that I would have a chance to do, and things I got to see. It's incredible.
Yeah, because I know time's tight for you, Dozer, so I'm just going to quickly ask you, you became a demo pilot in 2005 and 2006. Can you tell us about this?
Yeah, that's, they say the demo pilot, and Max Moga always gets mad because he was the real first demo pilot who would give me grief all. I helped create the demo in 2005 when I showed up at Langley. There was only two of us qualified to fly the airplane, myself and Corky. And so at the time, the aircraft was still struggling on how many we were going to buy and the money and how much it cost. And, of course, Air Force only. There was no support from the Navy, the Marines, or anybody else, like the F-35. It's got all these other people that want it. So they were struggling, politically with the aircraft. And so the commander of Air Combat Command, he looked me up first. He's like, "Hey, Dozer," he's like, "You're going to stamp the demo." I'm like, "Say what?" He was like, "You're going to stamp the demo." I'm like, "Oh, come on." I'm like, "I'm busy." I'm like, "I got like 3 jobs." And he's like, "You're going to do it." I'm like, "Oh, yes, sir." So there was no demo support group set up or anything yet. And so we didn't have the full profile. And it was kind of fun in one way because I didn't have all the oversight. I could kind of do what I wanted. So I would do like my little mini, goof off behind the show lines or up at high altitude because nobody really knew what to do with me. We did the heritage flights, with the old warbirds. We fly in formation. Cool. Got to fly in a Mustang and a T6 and some other cool old warbirds. That was really a lot of fun. But the honest part of that, what it was really for was to showcase the aircraft and get it in front of the public and give me a chance to talk on the radio and TV and newspaper interviews, whatever, in front of folks at the air show and go, "Well, let me tell you about your F-22," because people were not hearing anything except how much it cost and the downside. They weren't hearing the stories like I just told you. Let me tell you what this thing can do.
Yeah.
And also people can do that. I'm like, "Yeah, you have no idea. This is on our side." I'm like, "We need this." I try to tell people, like, this is like 2 football teams playing and one of the football teams is visible. It wipes out the field. I mean, it's not F-86 to F-4 to F-15. It kind of just continues with evolution. I'm like, no, this is revolution. This takes all that stuff and wipes it off. It's over again. It's that big of a change. And so the demo, that thing that happened in 2005 and 6 was more about me getting out in front of the public and having a chance to showcase the aircraft and tell the story as much as it was about the demo. Now, a lot of the maneuvers and other stuff, I helped vet those and run through them, and I did a lot of them and practiced them and all that kind of stuff. So it kind of helped. So yeah, I kind of stood it up. But again, if I see Max, he'll yell at me if I say that I was the first demo pilot because, like I said, he gets mad because he was the first that went and did the full demo thing in front of everybody. I just kind of did it on my own, either behind the show line or whatever. So just kind of showing people things. So, as a matter of fact, once I remember it now, I popped into the clouds at one point, and it was kind of one of those things I just did to depart, leaving, like kind of thing. And I remember the air show guy was looking at the FAA guy. Somebody's like, "Hey, can he do that?" He's like, "I don't know. He's F-22. I guess he can do it." It wasn't on purpose, but it was funny because guys, nobody really knew how to treat me in the F-22. It was this airplane, and everybody's like, "Well, he sees everything and he knows everything in that jet," because it's kind of funny. So it was a really interesting time. I enjoyed doing the air shows and talking to people. I was way too busy to do that job, but it was cool to get it in front of the public and try to explain to them just what America has on its hands, because a lot of people, maybe even today, really don't still understand just how capable that jet is. And I wish, unfortunately, it did not work. I wish we had bought more because we need several hundred more than we have to do the mission that we're being asked to do, but we don't have nearly enough aircraft, unfortunately. So
yeah, they are a brilliant machine. But can you briefly sum up what you did after the demo role in 2006 until you finished your Air Force career?
While I was still doing that demo thing that summer, I got a call from the ops group commander at Elmendorf, back to Elmendorf. And the F-22 was supposed to go to New Mexico next, and Alaska after that. So I thought I'd be stuck at Langley for a while. Well, I guess based on politics and some other things happening, they switched those. Mm-hmm. And all of a sudden, Elmendorf goes, "Holy mackerel, we don't have 2 or 3 years to get ready. We've got like months before, less than a year before the aircraft will show up." So they were in a mad scramble. Yeah. And the 1-star wing commander, Hawk Carlisle, who I consider a friend because he was, when he was a brand new lieutenant colonel, I was lieutenant of the squadron in Elmendorf back in the 90s, right, flying F-15s. There were only 5 names available to immediately move and go start standing up the operation at Elmendorf. I was one of those 5. That was a lieutenant colonel and a commander qualified, so I could do it. Mm-hmm. And I was the only name of those 5 that Hawk Carlisle knew. So I got the phone call, "Hey, Dozer, do you want to come up to Elmendorf?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I'll go back." And he told me, he's like, "Hey, they switched on us. It's not going to New Mexico. It's coming to Alaska next. We need somebody to come start standing it up, getting it ready, because we're going to have the first jets in 10 months. I'm like, "Whoa, okay." So, of course, I didn't turn that opportunity down because it meant I'd get a chance to be a squadron commander. And we went up to Elmendorf after that and took some time to stand up, became commander of the 90th Fighter Squadron. I was actually an F-15E squadron commander for one day.
Okay.
Because we had 2 day they left, we brought the F-22s up. I did that for a couple of years, and then it was towards the end of that when I knew it was time I was going to have to go off to, staff and school and Pentagon, all those other silly things after that. And my wife and I were looking at each other going, we love Alaska. Kids love it. This is our second assignment, coming right up on 20 years of service. I'm like, I really want to move and do all that. For a lot of reasons, family and various things, we decided it was time to get out. So got out and became the quintessential standard X fighter pilot. That was a airline guy, flew for Delta for about a year and a half waiting on FedEx. Eventually got hired by FedEx, domiciled in Anchorage, so I'm home a lot, and bought my little Bush plane with a couple ex-Air Force fighter pilot buds. And we fly all the time out in the bush doing other cool stuff. And that's it, man. Just kind of enjoying life now. And until this other job I told you about popped up earlier this year, which is keeping me a little busy right now. Wasn't on my radar scope. So.
Yes. Are you allowed to tell our viewers what you're doing currently in that role?
Yeah, I got appointed by our state governor to sit in a Senate seat. So right now I'm a sitting state senator. Was not anywhere on my radar as of January of this past year, but February it all kind of took place. And silly me, instead of saying heck no, what the heck are you thinking? I'm not doing that. I'm like, fine, I'll do it. And so I volunteered to put the suit on one more time to serve. This time my state instead of the country. So kind of beating my head against the wall with headaches of politics and trying to have good policy and balanced budgets and do all those other silly things now. So I'm not nearly as much fun as flying aircraft. But I am serving again just one more time, so we'll see how far this goes. But this is not fun, and I don't enjoy it compared to my previous life.
No, but it's certainly an interesting role, that's for sure. So, do you have any hobbies?
Yeah, I do. Fish, hunt, fly. I have a little jet ski, so we live on a little lake, so I like to jet ski because playing in the water is fun. I grew up in the water in Florida. And we shoot a lot, too. I know over there in Europe, that's kind of shooting stuff. In America, everybody's got but we do it. We hunt, so we do have guns for that. And we also take them for protection because we are not the top of the food chain in Alaska.
No.
So when we walk here often, we have a big rifle or shotgun or, something else on us just in case we run into things, which we have, big bears and other things happen. Wow. So, we have them for practical reasons as well. But, yeah, we do that quite a bit, too. So, and we do some competition shooting because it's like I don't do the sport. I mean, I love to play sports, but for me, shooting has become like golf,
Right, yeah.
So it's a very big sport over here for a lot of things competition-wise. So, yeah, I have a fair amount of hobbies. They're kind of diverse.
Certainly keep yourself busy, Dozer. That's for sure.
Right. Yeah.
So, do you have a favorite aircraft you've flown?
Well, yeah. Okay, so let's go back a bit. I think I was born 50 years too late. Honestly, if I could fly and own one aircraft of all of them and have flown in that era, it would have been a P-51. It would have been a Mustang. And I got a couple. One. Even got my wife a ride in one in Florida that a friend owns a couple. She even said, okay, now you're okay. You can buy a Mustang now. Once I told her that we can afford it, but she's like, you can get one. So I love the Mustang. I think that's probably my favorite aircraft of all time. If I could afford to buy one, it would probably be a Mustang. I just love the history, the sound, everything about them, and it's a fantastic airplane. Performance wise, you're not going to beat an F-22. I mean, it's just. I've been at 60,000 feet, like 10 degrees, 15 degrees nose high at Mach 2 accelerating. It really will accelerate in the climb going up, combat loaded. I mean, just it's a monster, so it can't scoff any of that. But yeah, my favorite aircraft of all time, I think it'd have to be a Mustang.
So how many hours did you get in F-15 and F-22?
I was just shy of 2,000 in the F-15 and about 800 in the F-22.
Pretty good. And finally, do you ever get sick of talking about aviation?
No, probably never. I love airplanes, man. I sit in our backyard with just little airplanes going over, and it's funny because my neighbors, they all fly too. We live in a little air park, and we'll all be sitting there, and an airplane to come over, and it's like we're all staring at it. It's like I've been that since I was a little kid, and my wife laughs. She's like, "You're gonna be doing that till the day you die. You look up every time an airplane comes over. Doesn't matter what kind of airplane it is, fast jet, big jet." Little freaking puddle jumper, doesn't matter. Just love airplanes, man. Everything about it. Some things get in your blood, I guess. You can't deny it. I love being up there. And that's where I feel free. Yeah. I really feel free and just kind of, everything's alive and, I'm paying attention to everything. It feels kind of like my second home.
Yeah. Well, Dozer, thanks very much for being on the show and sharing your experience of your career. It's been absolutely brilliant, and I know our viewers are going to, really love this interview. So thank you.
Well, you're very welcome, and thank you for not putting me on the spot with any tough questions I'd have to answer about. No, I can't talk about that. You did a really good job.
Cheers.